Alright, so this is going to be the first test of these videos that I'm going to be making, just doing lessons, so we'll see how it goes. I don't even know if my voice is picking up or what all's going on, but we'll see. That'd be kind of unfortunate if it wasn't. But so today we're going to be talking about V speeds, and we're mainly going to concern ourselves in a single engine aircraft that doesn't have retractable gear, that's got fixed landing gear with 9 different V speeds, which these are all of these that are listed right here. Um, Essentially, V speeds, what it is it's just speeds that are determined by the manufacturer that are like memory aids for us to remember as pilots. So we got to remember certain speeds that help us with, like, okay, when we stall or when we need to rotate, or like we talked about before, like the best angle of climb versus rate of climb, all of those things. So we will go ahead and get into it. So VSO starting, that is our stall speed in a landing configuration. So landing, I'm going to put LDG for short, landing configuration. So that is typically your slowest speed that you're going to have. And I actually have these like slowest at the top, fastest at the bottom. That's typically how you'll remember them or see them on a chart. So our stall speed in our landing configuration is signified with VSO. Then we have VS1, which is the same thing. We got our stall speed in a clean configuration. So if you remember before, Bart, when we were talking about different configurations, you got dirty and clean. And dirty would mean when you have all your flaps in, you're going into land, like, like we did when we were flying in the 152, or like I explained to you how we use full flaps when we're going into land. That is our dirty configuration. And then our clean configuration is just when our flaps are all the way up. Um, so that's actually this speed differential between the two is kind of big typically. I think in the DA-20, the plane that I fly, it's like 8 knots difference. So there's a pretty good difference between when you stall with your flaps all the way down and when you stall with your flaps all the way up. But you stall at a higher speed with your flaps all the way up, because if you remember, putting your flaps down creates more lift and more drag. But in this instance, we're worried about more lift, because since we have more lift, it's going to be harder for the plane to stall, because we remember that a stall is just when we are no longer generating enough lift to stay flying. Okay, next thing, VR, that is our rotation speed. And essentially what rotation speed means is it is the speed in which we're taking off. So we put in our full power, we're on the runway, and the speed at which we put a back pressure on either our yoke or our stick, the thing that controls our ailerons and our rudder. As soon as we put some back pressure on to lift off the ground, that's called rotating. And that rotation speed is the speed in which we do that, so that we have enough margin so that if we have too much of a pullback, we won't stall too much, but we also are generating enough lift to where we can safely get off the ground. Um, yeah. And then VX and VY, if you remember those, that's best angle and best rate. So we have best angle of climb. And then VY, we have best rate of climb. So if you remember that little picture I showed you, I think I have it right over here. Yeah. So best angle of climb gives the greatest altitude gain in the shortest horizontal distance. Best rate of climb gives the greatest altitude gain in the shortest time. So typically what we do when we take off, we shoot for best angle of climb so that we can get above a 50-foot obstacle at the end of the runway. And then we then transition to best rate of climb, just because we want to climb the most efficiently in the shortest amount of time. Then we have VFE, which is flap extension speed. Extension speed. And what that is essentially when we put our flaps down and it creates more drag and all, it changes the lift characteristics of the wing. We then have certain speeds that we can't go faster than with certain flap settings. Like if I have my flaps all the way down, there's only a certain speed that I can get up to, and if I get faster than that speed, then I have a chance to structurally damage my flaps. I have a chance to really damage those. So typically if you're looking at an airspeed indicator, like right here, you'll see this white arc. And this wide arc, you notice it goes from about 40 knots to this looks like 85. Typically, the way that a wide arc works is when you have your flaps at landing, so the lowest setting, the top of the wide arc, so in this case 85 knots, would be the max speed that you could go with that flap setting. And again, that's because if we went faster than that, we have the chance of, or the risk of, damaging. Then we have VA, which VA is our maneuvering speed. That's a very rough little U. So maneuvering speed is essentially when I'm flying, which you would never want to do this anyways, but if I was flying and let's say that I went to a what's called a full deflection of a control surface. So if I take my stick or my yoke and I roll myself all the way to the left, I go as far as I can to the left instantly. If I am below this maneuvering speed and I do that maneuver, I will stall the aircraft before I structurally damage the aircraft. But if I am above said maneuvering speed, I have the chance to structurally damage the aircraft if I do such a huge change of the control surface or anything like that. I have a chance to structurally damage the aircraft if I'm above this speed. So we typically, anytime that you're doing maneuvers, you're going to be doing them below your maneuvering speed just because obviously you don't want to structurally damage the plane. You would always prefer to stall before. VNO, that's our max structural cruising speed. So essentially what that means is it's the speed where in smooth air, so if there's not a lot of turbulence, if we're not getting bumped a lot, that is the speed in which if I go above it and I'm in turbulent air, I have the chance to structurally damage my plane. But if I'm below it in turbulent air, I would be fine. So again, if we look at our airspeed indicator, that's typically indicated by where this changes from green to yellow. That's where your max structural cruising speed or your VNO is at. So if I'm inside the green arc and in turbulence, I'm fine. If I'm inside the yellow arc and in turbulence, I have the chance to structurally damage my aircraft, depending on how bad the turbulence is. So that's something you always want to be cognizant of. And then last one that we want to concern ourselves with is our never exceed speed. And it's just what it says in the name. We don't want to exceed it. You never by any means want to exceed our never exceed speed, and that's signified by a red dash right there. So it looks like 158 on this is the never exceed speed. And again, these all airspeed indicators should be set up in a GA aircraft that you're going to be flying are going to be set up with a wide arc, probably a green arc, yellow arc, and then the red dash to signify your never exceed speed. But yeah, that is all of our V speeds. These are things like these 9 are the ones that you're going to want to have memorized when you go to fly. And when you go to fly, your flight instructor will probably have you spit them out to them or have you talk with them about them. So it's just important to understand what these 9 are and be able to at least have them memorized for what your plane and its limitations are.